So we're having a lot of fun talking to many of the artists that will be on the 2024 studio tour on San Juan Island. That'll be June 1 and June 2. Should be a beautiful weekend, we hope. And joining us today is Susan Hughes. Thanks for being with us, Susan.
Well, thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And your gallery, your business is Sea Glass Obsession.
It is.
So
because I have a sea glass
that's
obsession,
right.
and it just seemed to fit.
Aptly named. How far back does your obsession go?
I started collecting. My family had a house in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, on the East Coast, and so I started collecting when I was a little girl with my mom and my aunt, and still have some of that glass safely tucked away.
Wow.
Made it out here to the island with me.
What is it about sea glass?
Part of it is that it's sort of a trash to treasure thing. To me, it's just absolutely beautiful. They are like little gems. Right. And I love picking up pieces that have some writing on them, or you can tell what the sort of thing they came from. And you just imagine its journey and you wonder, how did it get there? And I don't know, each piece has its own history and we can only guess what it is.
How does it all get there?
Most of it is trash.
Yeah.
Most of it is trash. Old bottles, things like that. There are beaches around the world where there are bottle works and things like that, or glass works near the beach, and they just kind of dump their end of the day refuse, or had traditionally. Probably stopped doing that 40, 50 years ago. But the glass is still slowly being turned into little gems. And
it's not really pollution, is it? I mean, technically it is, but it
doesn't
hurt anything.
When
right?
you think about it, glass is made from the same stuff that sand is made from. Mm-hmm. So as it slowly churns its way back to being smaller and smaller and smaller, it's kind of just turning back into sand.
So as it's moving around on the ocean floor, it is breaking up?
Breaking up bits and pieces, yeah, and hitting rocks. Different beaches produce sea glass of different qualities. If you have a beach that is all rocky, you tend to get some sharper edges. If you have a beach that is rocky and sandy, it is definitely smoothed more. It's sanded more. The more sand there is, the more sanded it is.
When you're going over a beach, does it just jump out at you?
Yes.
You probably trained your brain to...
I say I have sea glass eyes.
Right.
I see it right away. I generally come up with more than anybody else that I'm with. I have friends who will accuse me of having stuffed my pockets before we went to the beach. And it's not the case. I always find it.
And some of this glass might be really old, right?
Some of it is really old. And especially, it's easy to date some of it if you have a piece that is lavender in color. The lavender comes from manganese, which is something they stopped putting in clear glass over 50 years ago. So if you find a piece that has turned sort of lavender in color, purple-ish, the more purple it is, the more sun exposure, and the older it is.
Now, until you turn it into art, it doesn't necessarily have much value, right?
No, other than it's just pretty. I just couldn't seem to stop collecting it.
Yeah.
So.
And you're still obsessed.
I'm still obsessed.
After all these years.
I'm still obsessed.
I think the obsession grew.
I like the whole idea of making art from found objects. I always have. When I first moved to the island, I actually started with making some driftwood sculptures, and won a blue at the fair with one of them, and I've entered a few since then. But I ended up feeling like there were a lot of people making similar driftwood type sculptures, and there really wasn't anybody doing anything with sea glass. And when I first started doing it, I made a couple pieces just for myself, for my house, and I had some friends, the Studio Wild ladies, who said, you know, you could sell this stuff. And I said, nobody would buy this.
They don't
yes,
know
they
anything.
would.
They don't know anything.
And so they started selling theirs, and they said, do you want to join our booth? And I was like, well, I'll try, but nothing's going to sell. And it did. So the rest is history.
How do you know the Wilds?
We've known each other now for 12 years or so. Knew each other before either of us moved to the island. And I met them originally through Facebook, of all places. We both had vintage campers, and we were in a international vintage camper group, and I saw something they posted, and I thought, well, that looks like it's close to where I live. That looks very northwest. And I looked into it, and I was like, oh, well, they work in the town I live in. And did some messaging, and we've been friends ever since.
Now, have you lived much of your life? Were you near the coast in New Jersey?
I grew up just outside of Philadelphia,
Okay.
in Media, Pennsylvania. But my family had the beach house. So it was less than 2 hours to get there. And then from there, I moved to Portland. Again, less than 2 hours to get to the coast. And from Portland, I moved to here.
So you never want to be too far away
I
from the
know.
coast.
I
But
don't-
you're closer now than
I'm
ever.
closer now than ever. I've never lived being able to see it every day before, so.
Yeah. And when did you arrive at San Juan Island?
I bought my house in 2014, and then I moved here full-time in 2019 after 30 years as an elementary school counselor.
What was it about San Juan Island that took hold? Was it an instant?
The everything.
Yeah.
The everything. You know, the San Juan just kind of has a quality to it. It's the pace, it's the feel of the air, it's the everything. I used to have people say, well, what do you do there? And I was like, whatever you want. Whatever, you can do anything, just about. They've got a movie theater, you can go to a movie. They've got a bowling alley, you can go bowling.
That's right.
You know, you can do anything. It's a smaller scale, and people are friendlier, and it sure feels safe.
Did your art, your art and your activity and your motivation increase when you got here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I hadn't attempted anything artistic other than doodling in a very long time.
Oh, really?
I used to, I'd have sessions with kids in my office, counseling sessions. And I always incorporated art into all of that. And they would look at something I was doing and say, you're an artist. And I'd say, no, my grandmother was an artist. I'm not an artist. And it's just funny to me that now I actually can say I'm an artist.
So where do you do all these creations?
My art studio is my living room. Most of it happens on my coffee table, and it's not very practical in the sense that I get everything. I do have things that are sort of out. My jars of glass are out, and below them on a shelf are all of my paints and pastels and all of the things I use in the backgrounds. But I do a piece, and then I have to pick it all up and put it all away every single time.
Oh, wow.
So, when I'm going fast and furious, there are times where I'll make a couple pieces before putting it all away. But we have 4 dogs in my house, so things can't get left out for too long.
Do they ever participate in the creative process?
They participate in knocking things over,
There you
but
go.
that's about it.
Yeah, but sometimes it's like, oh.
Oh, there
look
you
at
go. Look at that.
That's pretty cool. Good job. So describe the process.
Okay. I oftentimes will have in mind the type of piece I'd like to do. For instance, it was just last year that I started doing pieces that had quail in them. Now, I'd always done pieces with birds because glass and oftentimes rocks, they naturally break into sort of triangular pieces. And in that shape, they then, the edges soften, and to me, the resulting shape looks like a bird. So I thought, how can I make them actually look like quail? And I just started experimenting with drawing basic quail features on each individual little piece of glass and putting them on the paper and seeing how was I going to do this. Okay, if I shape them like this, what does that look like? Because I live on the west side of the island, I often do backgrounds that include the Olympic range, water, and a foreground because my inspiration is right outside my window every day. Right outside my living room window where I'm sitting. That's what I'm looking at. So I started putting quail on beaches and quail in my yard with the Olympics in the background. And the more of it I did, the more detail came into each one, into each quail, started doing waves coming up on the beaches.
Jeremy, let's start to look at some of Susan's work.
Okay. This is a piece that I did, I had guest hosted my friend's Roche Harbor booth. And the number of weddings that were happening up there, I thought, there might be a way to incorporate the whole idea of weddings into sea glass. So I came up with the idea of a bride and a groom and some madrona and trees and the water.
So is it the nature of this glass that it is generally the edges are softened?
The edges are softened.
They're almost like tumbled,
Yes,
almost in a way.
very much so. And the older they are, the more frosted they are.
Oh, okay. And there's some of that lavender that you were talking
Yeah,
about.
that's there's quite a bit of lavender in that piece, and those pieces are at least 50 years old. And it's hard to find that piece of lavender was probably at least a good 1.5 inches across. And finding pieces that are still that intact, that don't have any sharp edges, because it hasn't broken in its tumbling.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And is that ink underneath?
I do pen and ink under it. That piece has chalk pastel in the background to create kind of a watery feel.
Yeah.
And there's also, I believe there's probably some colored pencil in there as well on the individual tentacles.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cute.
And that's just a fun one, just birds on a wire.
You like birds, don't
I
you?
like birds. I feel like the sea glass lends itself well to that. I like to incorporate wish rocks into pieces where I can. That one has one right there in the middle. And
those are the true colors of the glass, are they?
those pieces are colorized. Well, let me take that back.
The pink one?
Okay, the pink one is colorized. The purple beside it is colorized. The others are not.
Right.
Yeah. And I really like the whole wildflower thing too. And sometimes I do the wildflowers just with the glass, and sometimes I do the wildflowers as background.
That's fun. Beautiful.
And then I started also trying to capture the hummingbirds. That is one, I think I made that one for my great niece. My sister was down visiting and said she was fascinated by my sister's hummingbird pictures, and could I make a piece for Claire?
The petals are perfect. And there's a uniqueness, like those two top petals on the top flower. They're similar, but they're definitely not the same.
No, they can't be, because
So one's more opaque and the other's totally transparent, but there's still that blue. So there's a kind of a uniqueness in every single piece of this.
Yeah,
They're like mosaics in a way. in some cases.
This was a commissioned piece. My friend's daughter was married last year over on the Olympic Peninsula. They live in Georgia. And she asked me to make a piece, and that was her daughter's wedding photograph beside Lake Cushman. And so I tried to capture the whole feel of the immensity of the mountains, the lake behind them.
Is that pen and ink?
That is chalk pastel.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a very good technique.
Thank you. Great blue heron. Just, we have them. I love them. I was sort of channeling my sister as I made that one. I don't think I've gifted her with one of these yet, but it could be coming. She is quite a photographer and speaks of herself as a heron addict because it's her favorite thing
yeah, those are pretty cool.
to photograph.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. That's beautiful.
This was one of my early ones. I just love the hanging baskets and incorporating the shells along with the sea glass. And I love using the bottle top pieces
Oh, yeah.
as
Look at that.
the pots because they have
That's
the
clever.
natural roundness to
Right.
them.
That's really cool.
And if you could get in close enough, you could see that up each string it says San Juan Island, Friday Harbor, Washington. The words are actually right in there.
Cool.
That's just about a complete bottle bottom. And I have probably in my lifetime only found 3 or 4 that are that complete.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Because they break. They often break when somebody throws the bottle initially, or they break much later. It's very hard to find the complete bottle bottoms. So
That surprised me because that should be the strongest part of the bottle, shouldn't
you
it?
would think, but oftentimes it'll be like the edge piece.
It's integrated into the
Yeah.
the parts that break more readily.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But
Cool.
I knew I had to make something that had a roundness to it, and that felt just right.
Does the color of the glass change when it's in the water for
No,
long periods of time?
I don't think-
So that was probably the original
that was the
color?
original color of that piece. With the exception of the lavender, there isn't any color changing.
Okay. But the lavender does change.
The
as you
lavender, the
described
old
before.
lavender, current clear glass does not change.
Okay. Wow, that's cool.
That was inspired by a friend of some friends of mine who does wonderful chalkboard art. And she did one, and I asked permission to try and capture that same sort of feeling in sea glass, and she said yes. So I captured that feeling, I think. Now, the piece there that is not from the island is, of course, the sand dollar, because we don't have them that I know of. But at last year's studio tour, somebody came up to me who had been through the tour once and said, here, I think you could use these. She had gone home and gotten a whole bag full of sand dollars and just gifted them to me. And I have put them to good use.
Ooh, that's neat.
And I just love the mushrooms. I noticed that more and more people seem to be making art. Mushrooms are having a moment.
Right.
And so in that one, I incorporated sea glass, sea pottery, and a chunk of sea brick.
Wow.
My beach over on the west side has quite a bit of pieces of brick. Yeah.
So where do we find your work? How do we buy your
I am
work?
at the farmer's market, and I am at the holiday markets, and I also have a very active Facebook page, Sea Glass Obsession, and I try and post very regularly, and people will often say, is this for sale? Can I buy that? And I do ship, and so, yeah.
Do your friends bring you glass?
I have had people bring me glass. If it is from the island, I will use it in my stuff. If it isn't, then it goes into a different pile, because I really feel like if I am saying that this is San Juan Island found, it needs to be San Juan Island found.
I'm just curious, like in your living room when you do, is the glass largely sorted by color?
Yes,
Okay.
I have a lot of jars. I started out thinking I would just get really big jars, but I found that it was too hard to work with the really big jars. I couldn't physically carry that many big jars over to where I was doing my work. So I tend to use smaller jars where I put things that I know are going to be useful.
So your entire collection then is only less than 10 years old, right?
No, because I was coming here for many years before that as well, since the mid-90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does it go back that far, to the mid-90s?
Yes.
Wow.
When I moved here, all my sea glass moved back with me, and all of my rocks moved back with me. and we know how it is living here. If you're at all prone to beach combing, you don't leave the beach with empty pockets ever.
Okay, well, I'll never look at the beach the same way after talking to you. So the studio tour, is it fun?
It's very fun. It's
Why?
very fun. It's fun to talk about your art with people. It's fun to see their reactions to it. It's fun to do this talking, to talk about what's the process. Do you do the drawing first? Do you come up with the idea first? What do you do? It's fun to see some of the same people and hear their feedback. And it's also always really interesting to see which pieces people respond the most to.
You never know?
I never know.
Really?
I don't. I know which ones I respond the most to, but I often have times where there'll be a piece that I think is going to sell like that, and it comes home with me. Mm-hmm. I have some of them on my wall because I loved them so much that that's where they are. Now, eventually, they'll go back into the circulation.
So I get the idea that as the studio tour, and I missed last year's, and I've only been here a year and a half, so I don't really have any history with this. But talking now, I think you're the 13th artist that we've talked to in the last month or so. And it feels like there's kind of an anticipation, kind of an energy that starts to build in the week or two before. Is that right?
To a certain extent, there's almost a panic that sets in. Do I have enough?
Right.
Do I have the right ones?
Right.
Do I, as I said, I'm never exactly sure which pieces people are going to respond the most positively to. And I want my work to be enjoyed by people. Yeah. That's my goal.
Sure. Well, it is a real pleasure to meet you, Susan, and I'll be on the tour.
Okay.
And I will see you.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing you.
I look forward to seeing the entire collection.
Awesome.
Are you going to have some of the samples, some of the big jars out there, or any of that?
I sometimes do that. Usually I just have like a little bowl. Mm-hmm. I often have a little bowl of pieces that are fine pieces in maybe some of the more common colors. So when children come up, I can just say, have you ever seen sea glass? Would you like to take a piece of sea glass?
And then you're getting them, their obsession started.
Maybe that's why the whole island's running out of sea glass.
Are we?
There is less.
Okay, well, and you probably picked up half of it, right?
I probably have.
Okay. Susan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And another great artist that will be in the studio tour this summer, June 1 and June 2. We'll see you soon.